Now, of course, we recently got the reveal of the brand new Battlefield from DICE, which of course is published by EA, and now I have some interesting comments made by Peter Moore, who is the former Executive Vice President and the current Chief Competition Officer over at EA. And he recently discussed a few interesting things with the Daily Orange, and it is a fairly lengthy interview, so I'll link it in the description below, but there's a couple of things from this interview that I want to touch on today. And the first of which is his opinion that the Xbox One and PS4 may be the last generation of consoles. Now, he's probably including the supposed PlayStation 4 Neo and Xbox 1.5, or whatever you want to call it, in that generation of the PS4 and Xbox One. And basically what he's envisioning is that it will be sort of a more streaming based service, and the only physical thing you need to own is sort of a monitor, maybe a flashlight drive device, or and obviously a controller, maybe just pure streaming. We just don't know. Obviously this is pure speculation from Peter Moore, and he said, quote, "I'm not sure there will be consoles as we know them anymore. What? Games will be accessed by streaming technology, so I don't need hardware intermediaries in between the two. If you and I want to play Battlefield 12 against each other, we'll just jump into a game via whatever monitor we happen to have in our homes. It'll be on a chip rather than in a box." And he went on to say that both the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 are well set up in advance with technology in the greater scheme, and so we may never see another console outside of that generation. So he's kind of going on the theme that we've seen in rumours recently, that it's going to be more intimate, incremental upgrades for both the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Now, the other thing he touched on that I want to discuss are, of course, esports. They are becoming bigger and bigger, especially with games such as League of Legends, Dota, and of course Counter-Strike, as well as the smaller games like StarCraft 2, and of course one of the bigger games, which is Hearthstone, and undoubtedly there will be future games coming along in the esports scene as well. And he made some interesting comments about esports, in which he said, quote, "At the top level now, these teams are sequestered away. They have training houses and they have daily regimens. It's their full-time job. They are working strategically as a team. That puts it out of the boundaries the same way that, as a kid, I wanted to play for Liverpool. No, I wasn't going to, but it got me really engaged in the game of football. It's the same with e-gaming." So basically it's saying that it's sort of the same level of dedication and sort of practice, teamwork, coaching and everything else that goes into esports as becoming more and more like a real sport, if you want to use that term, or at least similar. It's obviously never going to be exactly the same as like football or basketball or whatever, but it's going to have similar carryovers in that, a player will literally spend hours and hours and hours practicing the same thing over and over, so they know that if this player does that, they can counter it and that sort of thing. Always rolling with the meta, changing their strategies based on what's popular in the ladder, and of course their rivals. They need to kind of counter what builds they think they might have, and of course there's always a case they're going to surprise them with a build, so they always need to think on their feet, be flexible and that sort of thing as well. And lastly, he made some comments about augmented and virtual reality, as of course the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive are slowly making their ways into the hands of consumers, especially the Oculus, which of course having major problems actually getting units into the hand of people who pre-ordered it. And of course many people can't even afford the devices in the first place. Of course PlayStation VR is not out until October, so it's going to be a while before VR becomes widely adopted. But Peter is basically saying that eventually it will be a part of major part of gaming, rather, that being both augmented and virtual reality. And he said, quotes, "The challenge right now with VR and AR is that they are very solitary. I don't want to say they're antisocial, but they aren't social. What you do by putting on a helmet or goggles is that you isolate yourself from the world. They're trying to stop you from throwing up and trying to get the right experiences, and then social will come." So basically he's saying that for VR to really take off, it's going to need more social experiences, and I can kind of see his argument. I personally have always been a very single-player focused person. I very rarely play multiplayer-only games. I think the Overwatch beta is probably the most time I've thrown into a multiplayer-only game, like, ever, to be honest. Maybe not if you count Hearthstone, but of that particular genre, the FPS. So maybe when you have more social games, you get perhaps a wider audience of people, wanting to play together, that sort of thing. And it was always nice when you can play games with your friends, especially if it's a brand new experience and you kind of enjoy that hype feeling together. So, there you have it, some fairly interesting comments from Peter Moore about various things. As I said, there is a couple of other things he discussed that I didn't touch on here, so if you want to read the whole interview, it is linked in the description below, so thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.